On this episode of Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered, we talk about NAR's past, its struggles, its future. We got a really good reminder about all the things that NAR does that have actually kept all of us employed. So it's a big reminder for me. So tune in. It's going to be a great show. You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, James Dwiggins, along with my co-host, Crazy Uncle Keith.
Yes,
Keith,
sir.
tell us about Seth Task, the 2024 NAR Public and Federal Issues Liaison.
Yes, nothing better than a podcast about NAR nowadays.
This was a really good one, though.
It was so good. And here's why. It was a candid and vulnerable and honest conversation about the past and what's gone wrong at NAR, how NAR could and should approach the future. And we also spent some time reminding ourselves, I know I was reminded, about some of the things that NAR has done to help the industry. And I think
we'd all be unemployed, like without them, is what I realized.
Yeah.
So
put it in your ear, kids, because I think we may have forgotten some of the things that NAR has done for us.
Seth, welcome to the show. We are super excited to have you on the show. This is going to be a little bit of a different podcast than we have done in the past, but I am very excited to dive deep into these topics. Also, as we're going to have you explain your background real quick to the viewers and listeners, the tens of thousands of you that are following this stuff now. But I'm actually really excited to have you because, your background is you're in the field and you're a practitioner. So just tell everybody a little about who you are, and then we'll dive into these topics about NAR, which happens to be a big headline these days.
Oh, yes. Beep, beep, beep. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. Always happy to talk real estate. Listen, I'm just like, the rest of the realtor community. I'm a practitioner on the ground. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised, former Browns mascot. I was the first official dog of the Cleveland Browns.
Shut up.
I know. Seriously, I saved that for you. You didn't know that. I didn't send that information to you. I was the first person to dress up as a dog for the Cleveland Browns.
You might be the coolest person I know now. Like to the top of the list.
Up there.
That's a superhero power right there in itself.
I'm signed on Art Modell.
Yeah. Oh.
So because we don't want to get into that. But I've been a realtor for 18 years. I have a team here in Cleveland called the Task Team. We sell, hundreds of houses a year. And I do residential and commercial. Also now doing new construction. I started a modular company. So we're starting to try to fill this affordable housing gap because not many people are trying to build in affordable price points. So that's something else that I do.
That's a whole problem.
I'm a partner with my brokerage, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Professional Realty. And in the realtor community, I've been... I always say, if you have no right to complain if you're not going to be part of the solution. So I started volunteering at the Realtor Associations in 2009. I was a YPN chair when I started out. Been past president of the Akron Cleveland Association of Realtors, past president of Ohio Realtors. And I've been doing work at NAR. I'm sort of a political and advocacy geek. So, when I looked at the NAR committees years ago, they brought all of the first year they brought YPN leadership around the country to NAR for what they call Leadership Summit, which is chairs, vice chairs, and president-elects and associate executives they bring to sort of, hey, this is how we work together and all this kind of stuff. We didn't really know why we were being brought there, or they just said, here's $750 to go to Chicago. I went to Northwestern. I was like, I'll go back to Chicago. So we went, and a bunch of us, under 40 somethings, we're just hanging out and drinking and having a great time. And then, Ron Phipps comes in the room and says, we need young people on national committees. And they passed this list out. And I said, federal financing and housing policy. That sounds sexy.
Well,
So
your
definition of sexy is
you really are a
I
policy
said,
geek. If
I
that
did.
you're like, that sounds sexy, I'm gonna check
did.
that box. Yeah.
I did. So that was my first committee. I've chaired that committee since. I've chaired conventional financing and policy committee, and I am now the 2024 public and federal issues liaison.
so you're with the incoming administration for, well, technically Tracy's there. So
Yes.
in the new year, you'll be in the role.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And I think that's important for everyone to hear is, typically, and this is just in general, we're bringing on, chief executive officers of all these different companies. And we were intentionally wanting to bring somebody who has a significant background in the association work and boots on the ground, which most of the executives we talk to don't sell real estate. So,
right.
It's a shame.
And they did, to be clear, but they just don't now. And so we're wanting to really have a deep discussion about some of this stuff. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here. And Keith and I did preface, just this is not there's no actual set real agenda here for the viewers and listeners. And Seth has agreed to come on and take the hot seat questions. So we'll start with this.
Did I?
Yeah. we'll know in a minute.
What?
Yeah, we'll know in a minute. Look, I mean, I think we can all agree that NAR's had a hell of an 18 months. Been really difficult, both with, all of the lawsuit stuff that's certainly occurring, obviously the harassment stuff that's happened. You're on the executive committee, correct? Is that director?
Yeah. So, I've been a director for since 2016.
So you're part of the leadership team, though, correct?
Now.
As it goes forward.
14 days ago. So
got it.
Yeah, the extended leadership team. So it's important to know that, because the leadership team is like the president, immediate past president, first vice president, president-elect, and the two appointed vice presidents. So they're the high-level leadership team. The extended leadership team are all the liaisons that are appointed by the president to oversee the committees and be the conduit of information from that committee work to the leadership team. So that. So best way I can explain.
No, this is fine, because I don't think anybody knows how the whole thing's structured anyway.
It's important to know. Listen, it's when you accept an appointment like this. I accepted this appointment. I don't know, over a year ago. You knew you were getting it. Maybe
eventually, right?
Yeah, I can't remember when it was. End of 22 or something. Whatever it was, you sort of knew. So I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Evidently. And it's like one of these, I've wanted this position for a long time because I'm a political junkie and I feel I'm the right person for this job. I know the advocacy space as well as any realtor in the country, probably. And I've been excited to do this. I'm also on the RPAC travel team, which means I get to travel the country and talk about why our advocacy is so important, which I think is one of the strongest benefits that we have as an association, as a member. Yeah. But I didn't realize I was going to be on the cleanup crew. And that's how I think we feel. And that's okay. Right leader, right time, I guess. I hope that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your willingness to be here speaking into a microphone says a lot, right? Like you're leaning into it. You understand that nothing's been solved by communicating less. Ever in the history of man.
1,000%. And I wish more people would speak up for NAR. I'm not running away from it. I know the value of what NAR is, what it has been. It's unfortunate this black eye or multiple black eyes, unwarranted in some capacities, but is what it is. So we can't run from it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think NAR needs to change? And since you're part of, I'm going to use your words, the cleanup crew, what you can divulge, like where do you think it needs to go? There's a lot of people with opinions about this, and you're value your opinion a lot more because you're there.
Yeah,
like you've been brought in post.
Yeah,
all of the crazy.
I will tell you that I think it's important to know, and I think Tracy has said this publicly. That listen. There were systems that were not in place that should have been in place, and there's no excuse that they weren't. I think a lot of it, what's interesting is that NAR is a very different, cat than most organizations. It's this massive. It's a massive organization. Yeah. It's the largest trade association on earth. It's got 1.5 million members. Almost everybody that other than staff, of course, every realtor that works here works within the workings is a volunteer. And it's policing volunteers is something that's an interesting. It takes a real interesting set of policies and procedures for that, and there weren't a lot of policies and procedures for certain incidents and circumstances. And plus, we've got 3 levels. We call it the 3-way agreement, like the local, the state, and the national. So things happen at all different levels. And so I could tell you that right now, whether people believe it or not, and I don't care whether they believe it or not, I'm telling you that it is. I am serving myself on the policies and procedures committee. And every one of these different committees, whether it's the culture committee, and I'm not sure I even have the right word. It might be a culture commission. I think it's Culture Transformation Commission, the CTC. Policies and procedures. There are 3 different groups now that have been established that are working on fixing the systems around preventing any of this crap from happening again. And I think it's also most important to understand that we're not making those decisions. We have third-party law firms, professionals, other entities whose expertise lies in that field running the show. We've hired an interim CEO who is a brilliant woman, okay, and I've met her a couple times, and I can tell you that she's all business, and very attuned to public image.
Do you think that out of some of this stuff, there's a lot of people talk about the structure, and in your comments, valid. I mean, it's a massive organization with everybody has an opinion. Go figure in residential real estate.
Everyone has an opinion, period, right?
Period.
Well, everyone has an opinion of the real estate market, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that there needs to be, or there will be, organizational changes, structural changes to the way NAR operates in the future?
I would say that's the case about any organization, wouldn't you? I mean, I think that any organization. One of my favorite quotes is from the play Inherit the Wind, which, if you don't know what that's about the Scopes monkey trial. But there's a quote in there that says, "Perhaps it is you, my friend, who moved away by standing still." It's one of those things where, listen, if you're not changing with the times, you're falling behind. So of course things are going to change, and things are changing. And that's a good thing.
Sure. The narrative that's out there, and Keith and I have been very direct on record that we absolutely think this is a stupid idea. We'll repeat again. There is a narrative about this thing just needs to burn to the ground. I've actually seen somebody post that
NAR.
before.
Yeah, blow up NAR. Who needs them? Burn it to the ground. They don't help us anyway. That message.
What does that world look like? What
does that look like?
Yeah, what is that? Let's just play that out for a second. Let's just blow it up, burn it down. Let's just go down that road for a second.
Let's talk about that. So when you say burn it down, do we mean that nothing takes its place?
Yeah, anarchy. That's what people want.
So I don't think that people. Well, we can't say people. That's horrible to say. Everyone, there's no.
Sure.
Absolutes are so horrible. Be like, everyone, everything, no one does this.
The people who are posting burn it to the ground. Yeah.
So burn it to the ground. First off, if an organization, trade associations exist for a reason. If you say burn NAR down, you might as well burn down every other trade association. Lobbying is lobbying and member services, education and professionalism. I mean, these are pillars of trade associations. And if you think that the profession of selling the largest sector of the United States economy doesn't deserve protection and doesn't deserve professionalism and oversight of its own operations, and doesn't deserve advocacy, then I don't know how to help you.
Let me take the side of the frustrated person, and you just talk to me, and because then everyone can hear it, right? Because I do understand it when you feel let down by someone or something. There is a natural reaction to want to lash out at it, right? That's a base human instinct, and that's why we say things that we regret when we're in an argument with someone, right? And you can't go back and unring the bell. And I do think, and you've stated this already, so not in your words, but like NAR's earned some frustration, right? It is okay and appropriate that people are mad and frustrated, because there have been some things that have happened that are maddening and frustrating.
Yeah, to us too.
Correct, right? To everyone. Yeah.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, I sell real estate. That's what I do. I'm sitting here talking to you because of NAR. Right. This is an hour that I could be on a listing appointment. That's right.
Okay? Or leading your team, or reading a book.
When I went to St. Louis for a Realtor Party training conference, that was 3 days that I could be at home. Sometimes it's incalculable how much more money I can make, or how much more business I could do.
You actually
I'm not out here doing this. Okay, I don't have to be doing this.
Right. So I'm the person who is at the keyboard and feeling these feelings. What would you say to me? What would you tell me? Like if we were having coffee.
Well, first thing I would say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's the start of it. I always like to say, I say this to managers and in leadership, and people just want blame to rest somewhere. It's a human thing. Yeah. You ever notice when, even if it's not your fault, as a team leader, Tracy had us read a book called Extreme Ownership. Write it down. Great book.
I've read it. It's great.
Oh man, it really.
Is that Jocko Willink's book?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great book.
Great. And they came in and presented to us. Amazing book, Extreme Ownership. And listen, it was the first time I had read somewhere that what I've been telling people all along. I'd say, listen, just take the blame. People just want blame to rest somewhere. Until it rests somewhere, it's just a constant, lack of communication. There's always adversarial, things going on. Hey, listen, and I say that to my team. I'm like, listen, just take the blame, whether it's your fault or not. But as a leader, it's always your fault, right?
Right.
Anything that happens on my team, even if I didn't know about it, it's my fault. I didn't know about it.
Right.
Listen, it's my fault. I wasn't communicating often
with the
enough.
title.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is I'm sorry, whether I was there at the beginning or not, whether I was, on the, involved, so for my first time involved in leadership, and this, so this is what I got to do over the next year. Then I'll listen, and I will, and I'm happy to apologize on behalf of what's happened. But I can tell you, as somebody who's now, in the room, is every day, every minute, every action is about building that trust back, about fixing those issues. And I don't want to make light of or lessen, what happened, or some of the things that happened. Some of it's been blown way up, and that's okay, because nothing that happened should have happened. But it's all in process of having the right policies, procedures, etc., being fixed.
Yep.
I like that comment about restoring trust too. With that,
it's imperative. I'm sorry, I really am. But I could tell you that, you know, fixing what this association is going to be a lot easier than people think that it is.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, it's not as difficult as people are making it to be. Fixing a reputation is something. Listen, how many times you said, right? It takes years to build a reputation and one tiny act to destroy it.
Yeah. And to your point, trust is earned. It isn't given, right? 100%. And so it requires time to earn that trust back. Yeah.
I think talking about what NAR really does.
Yeah.
You know, I think if I'm talking to you and you're saying, you know, this, you guys need to go away. And I would then follow that with, listen, I respect your opinion. I understand what you're saying, but did you know?
Yeah. Right.
Before we burn it down, let's have an honest discussion about what actually NAR is.
Well, I'd like to dig into some of those things in this pod as well.
Can I make one point real quick before we transition?
Yeah.
Is because I want the industry to understand this, that feelings are not an appropriate gauge for what you should do, right? It might make you feel better in the moment, right? Burn it down, right? They don't do shit. Like, get rid of those guys, right? That might feel good in the moment, but how you feel is often a terrible indicator of what you should do in business, right?
Or personal life, by the way.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to stay away from that one. But so I just want people to be reminded that your feelings aren't invalid. They are valid, and the industry has earned those feelings. And the initial reaction to those feelings, that what you want to do with those feelings, is often a terrible idea.
Right.
I mean, I agree 100%. And, you know, the key here, I think then, and we'll get into this a little bit, is there's a lot of stuff that, as you've now stated, NAR needs to fix, and it's being worked on. And thank you, by the way, for volunteering to do that. Because I understand the fact that when you're not working in your company, it's you're volunteering your time, and it's money essentially you're giving up.
I would ask the realtors out there who are, you know, cut us that slack at least, because I say that to agents here. I'm like, listen, I can take back my 400 hours a year. I don't even know how many it is. It's a lot that I volunteer for the betterment of their profession, the general public, private property rights, advocacy, all of that. And I could take that all back and be greedy, and make a lot more money. But if all of the volunteers who are so passionate about what we do did that, man, the market would look a lot different.
It would. I'm going to move this into actually slightly different direction than I was going to take this for just a second. You know, there's also an element of personal responsibility that Americans in general, yes, everybody that's listening, as well as realtors, need to stop having opinions about stuff they don't educate themselves on. For example, I'm gonna dive deep into this because I want to know, because I don't know some of the things that NAR has done or remember, which is probably what this is going to be, because I tend to follow some of this stuff. But 9 times out of 10, when I ask somebody, they're like, I hate NAR. I'm like, what is it that you hate about them? I like to just ask questions, obviously. And they're like, oh, well, they just don't do anything for me. Well, what does that mean exactly? What don't they do for you? When was the last time that you went to realtor.org and actually
peruse the website?
Besides your login, did you go actually read anything? And they get stumbled. Right. And you know, what's the dues now? 154, six, whatever it is. By the way, if you don't,
so low,
it's $156.
It is so low. I can't remember one. I was the professional. I'm trying to remember the one that was totally freakish to me. There was I can't remember. I wish I could remember. It was the National Association of, I don't know,
whatever.
I don't know what it was, but it was $2,500 a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're so low in the spectrum. It's unbelievable.
Well, and so we're a member of the International Franchise Association, and as a company, it's 6,000 to be a member.
Yeah,
that's it.
I told you, I think, I don't know if I said at the beginning, I build modular houses, and the Modular Housing Institute is 1,100.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to counter that comment also with, one of the things that NAR has to continue to get better about is educating people as well. And it's undeniable there has been a communication gap for some time. I believe we just got a new chief communications officer hired. Yes. I believe that's and nobody's been in that role for a while. It's like, I mean, there's a way you can see that there's been a lack of communication, but that also is self-responsible.
Has there? I mean,
kind of
open an email, people. I mean, go to the website, go to the social. You want me to drive to your house?
Yeah, but
it'd be nice. It'd
be nice. $1 million a year, ish.
But look, there's. I'm gonna push back because you said that. Right. So I personally think strategy behind communication has been lacking, and I'm not ragging on anybody. But for example, if in my organization we have PR crisis teams, we do. And it's designed for when somebody does something stupid and it shows up on the news, we have our person to contact, we have an execution plan, and we go. My comment would be, we lost the lawsuit. I'm not going to go into lawsuits today, but we should have had a PR campaign aggressively going out to counteract, which we all have seen, the massive amount of negative PR going on about our industry. I'm not ragging. I'm simply stating that I think that part of there needs to be in looking at stuff, the overall how we communicate is, in my opinion, just my humble opinion, needs to be part of that discussion for what the organization does. Because man, our industry has been quiet.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. I'll add a layer, right? Quiet. Like, because I know NAR has sent a bunch of emails, right? And look, we deal with this in our organization. We send emails.
Nobody reads our shit.
Nobody reads our shit. It drives us crazy, right? But there. If that isn't working, then we've got to figure out another.
It's not just that though. We have broker involvement council. We have we disseminate through the brokers. We disseminate through social media. We disseminate through media, through public media.
Wholeheartedly agree with you.
Listen, I hear. So why those of us, the 10% of us or less that actually volunteer, okay, and that. We're all of us are like, my God, how do I was talking to an agent. I was in a deal with somebody trying to raise RPAC dollars just a couple days ago, and I you should have seen the text message that I sent them. Do you know that Ohio State, got business income deduction? They were going to cut it down from $300,000 to $100,000. I saved you $3,000 in state income tax. We did 3 years in a row now. I said, I'm only asking for $1,000. You sell $15 million a year. I didn't know that. I know you didn't know that. I mean, it takes me telling you. It takes an army to spread this information. So I hear what you're saying. I get it, and it is in our strategic plan to create better ways of.
What do you think that we'll go to opinion now, right? Because it's not a lack of effort on NAR's part, but then why the disconnect? What do you think that is? We're
a behemoth. It's massive. It's huge. I mean, it's 1.5 million people. Come on now. Look at this. Look at how much misinformation is going to be spread during this next presidential election campaign that people are going to go to the ballot.
Is any of it actually information
on one of these? Let's not go there.
No, we're on the same page. Like, okay. Great job, America. Two great choices. I mean,
the stuff that I hear, like, like I said, I'm a political junkie. We have these guys come in and talk to us about candidates and stuff like that, and then they show us interviews that they did during polling. And when you listen to these people, you're like, oh my God, look, how does somebody get to this stage in their life? Where they're making decisions on this information. It's tough. I mean, but
look, and also let's, in fairness to the industry, we've kind of, to some degree, it's structured this way. The average realtor does 3 deals. Is it 3? Well, it'd be less than that this year, but in past times, it was like 3 deals a year.
It's slightly over.
Fine.
Yeah.
They're
Between 3 and
looking.
4.
They're just going like paycheck to paycheck, doing something else, or not paying attention. They're just trying to figure out how top of funnel. We argue about this all the time. Like we're just everything's top of funnel, top of funnel, top of funnel. I mean, we are obviously, I think, kind of agreeing here that there needs to continue to be adoption and change. And also, I want to reinstate my point, and then I want to dig deep into a little bit about some of these specifics. But like, our industry also needs to wake up and like educate itself and take a little responsibility at the same time. So that's a good segue.
You should have a podcast.
Let's talk about since you're the political junkie.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of these things that would never have happened had NAR not existed. And I want to start with one because I think this is the one where, and Keith and I are going to probably make some really stupid comments here, but
Usually.
the CARES Act. Let's go back 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When COVID happened and the world was freaking out and we didn't know anything and we didn't trust anyone or whatever. Like we just went into this thing and a bunch of states shut down and like we went into complete panic.
Yeah.
We had states where the real estate agents were not deemed essential. Everything, title companies closed, like nothing was moving. And I remember this because, Keith and I, our other job is to manage a big real estate organization. And we're sitting here going, well, what are we going to do?
Crazy. Like it was literally illegal might be the wrong phrase. I don't know exactly. I am not a political nerd. But like it was literally illegal or whatever the right term is to sell a house in a handful of states across the country. Imagine you are 2 days away from the close of your transaction. All you want to do is get to that new place and bunker down because of the insanity that's going on. And the government said, that's not essential. Nah. And then your loan docs expire.
And then you don't know how you're going to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Here in California?
We are, unfortunately, yes. We don't like say that publicly very much.
Yeah. What gave it away?
I was talking to a lot of Californians during that period of time.
So talk to us about the CARES Act and like give us an example of literally an example of how. Yeah,
for sure. Well, first thing I think it's important to say when we talk about NAR and its advocacy power, NAR is an entity and a lobbying entity that is equally balanced on both sides of the aisle. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about candidate contribution, it's 50-50, 49-51. It's always very close to even. Housing is a nonpartisan issue. Okay. Mm-hmm. The economy is nonpartisan. So, I mean, what people feel or think about it might be something that's a little bit different. But in the CARES Act, the NAR was literally pivotal.
There's the Great Dane.
That's Amazon.
That's Amazon. Is his name Amazon?
It should be actually. Yeah. She's a Great Dane, so it's actually fun watching the drivers when she jumps on the door.
Run back to the truck.
Jump back, fall back off of the porch. Yeah. So during the CARES Act, there was some absolutely unprecedented things that happened in that legislation. That NAR was literally at the table with legislators helping to draft the various drafts of the act. Independent contractors, which were an independent contractor status, and by the way, we've maintained independent contractor status as realtors for our entire existence because of NAR. There have been many times where that's been on the chopping block.
I want to come to that in a second. I want to go to that
as small businesses. Yeah. So number one, nationally, real estate was deemed an essential service. Nationally, okay. Mm-hmm. So then it went down to the states, but that's number one. Which to be clear,
if we did not have people connected in the room, potentially we would not have been deemed an essential service and everyone would be unemployed.
That's
basically.
Right. We have a seat at the table in every congressional office in the country. If you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. Okay. So
that's a really good quote.
I got to write that down.
That's it. You don't, right? I mean, listen, when they're writing the menu up, if you don't have a seat at the table, so we are literally in every office. On Valentine's Day, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. meeting with Congresswoman Shontel Brown. So number one, we are deemed nationally essential service. Number two, for the first time in the history of the country, independent contractors qualified for unemployment benefits.
Yeah.
Ever.
That was specifically us putting that into the legislation.
Yeah, for the burn NAR to the ground crowd. Like,
for those of you who sell 3 houses a year, okay,
no judgment,
and we're able to collect, okay, and the $600 payments, okay,
right.
EIDL, okay, and PPP loans. Those were put in at the request of the National Association of Realtors. You know, the PPP loans were imperative. We didn't know. Listen, my volume was down 50% in April, and we were an essential service in March and April of 20. But we didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know that I was on my way to the best year of my career. We had no idea. I just knew that we were in lockdown and people were going out.
At that point in time, it was canned peaches and ammunition, and then later on, your career actually went.
I didn't know. I didn't know it was just going to be free money, but it was, and that's great. You know, but those things were in there because we put them in there.
But to anchor back into like the reality of it, I was on the phone with a Pittsburgh owner who was in tears because Pennsylvania deemed it non-essential. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't in tears because of her business. Do you know why she was in tears? She was in tears because she couldn't figure out how to articulate this to her clients who had all of these needs, wants, and desires. And now she felt helpless to provide the service that is why she does what she does. And if you don't think NAR was essential in getting that fixed, reversed, and changed, you're crazy. Yeah. And listen, I've bashed NAR before, right? I'm no NAR apologist. I'm not here stumping for NAR. But if you think that happens without NAR, you're delusional.
You're out of your mind.
There's no way. There is no way. Yeah. And so, like, if all NAR did was political action and threw all the other stuff out the window, it's still worth your $156.
It's the most important thing we do. Unequivocally, without question, undeniably. It's the reason why it's the reason I volunteer. I'm a political junkie. If I didn't believe that what I was doing here mattered, listen, I'll tell you what. My very first committee meeting at Federal Financing and Housing Policy Committee, okay, which is FHA, USDA, VA, and HUD. My very first meeting. Are you guys realtors?
I'm not any longer.
Not yet.
Right. Well, years ago, if you sold a HUD property during the mortgage meltdown, okay, you had to write. You had a buyer. You had to write an offer on their paper. You had to do it in triplicate with blue ink. 3 triplicate with blue ink. You had to overnight it with a cashier's check on a property you weren't under contract on to some office in wherever.
The 50s called. They want their real estate transaction back
within 48 hours. Okay, and we had DocuSign and .loop. We had electronic signature systems, and so it was a boring meeting. We really didn't do anything. It was my first meeting, and then they said, go to the order, or and new business. Anybody have any new business? And I was just like, I'm at my national committee. I'm like, am I allowed to say? Well, I said, well, I have a question. I said, we do HUD here, right? They said, yeah. I said, well, I'm working with a lot of investors. I don't know anybody else is writing on HUD contracts, but this whole triplicate thing with blue ink and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's horrible. This is crap. Why should we have to do that? I said, we have electronic signature. So that turned into a discussion and a motion. And 8 months later, it was gone. And I'm like, what? This is what we do.
Yeah.
let's go to this internal revenue code section. I had to write this down because internal revenue
You
code.
know what you're talking about?
I'm trying. That's why you're here.
Just
3508. Yeah.
Just in case the IRS is listening, I promise.
You're saying code, so I'm going. Is maybe that's
I'm referring to independent contractor status.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. That was kind of my joke. I was trying to sound educated. The independent contractor status that that we have, which I'm not. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone else has this carve out that I'm aware of.
well, I don't want to say nobody. I mean, independent contractors means you're a 1099 instead of a.
We have our own specific carve out though in residential real estate that we've been doing for a long time.
Right. Yeah, we're a unicorn.
Yeah. What would happen if that wasn't there?
Oh boy, the tax benefits would be substantial. The tax implication would be substantial. Yeah. We're a small business. That's what we are. 1.5 million small businesses, and that's a big deal.
I just am looking at it like, well, if we didn't have it, and I know we're constantly involved in this. To be clear, this is not just. I'm also fairly educated on this on a different side of joint employer relationships in the franchise world. A massive topic going on. They're trying to make it so that the franchisee is essentially an employee of the franchisor. Oh yeah, it's a huge issue. It's a big problem. Again, why I put money into the International Franchise Association to lobby to stop politicians from doing stupid shit they do all day. So
they just want more money.
I know, but they just want the $6,000. Like, don't worry, the $6,000 is nothing. If we had that happen to us, we'd be fine, Keith.
No big deal.
No big deal. We're now liable for what 6,000 people do.
Right.
That independent contractor status that we had continued, that is on the chopping block, pretty much all the time, I'm assuming. Yeah. And we're fighting for that consistently. The ABC test is what they're using as the baseline for this. It's, they're constantly looking at what we do as a profession going, does it violate that? Does it not? If we didn't have that independent contractor status, that world looks very different. Like the tax advantages are gone. And if you have to be an employee, like, I don't want to sound grim here to everyone listening, but like if you sold 4 or 5 houses a year, which is roughly 80 to 90% of the industry that do that, you would not have a job. Because let me be very clear about it. Your broker is not going to employ you.
Right. Or your split would change, right? You'd be on a 50-50.
Or more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I haven't, and I can say these because it's the podcast that we get to host, but like, there hasn't been a successful proven W-2 model. I have not seen on a mass scale that proven out in our business yet.
I agree.
There's a company that's been trying for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name any of them either, but agreed, 100%. There has not been. Well, and you know what? And any of us,
on a large scale, to be clear with my comment.
Yeah, there are teams that have done it successfully, but
5,000 agents. I don't know. I'd have to look at the number of that brokerage, but I would say this: they wouldn't work as hard. It's a job. I tell every new realtor that sits in front of me, I'm like, listen, let me make one thing very clear to you: this is not a job. Yeah, you're the CEO of John Smith LLC or whatever you want to call yourself, and you better understand that if you look yourself in the mirror every day, you're waking up unemployed until you find yourself a listing or a buyer. You better better take money. Mm-hmm. So this business is not for the faint of heart either. I mean, we're dealing with people's lives here, and how many, when you're selling somebody a house or selling their house or even a business or whatever, these are big deals to people. Yep. Other than the investors that are just buying, a house, a multifamily here or there, that's just like, old hat to them. Most transactions in the country, listen, somebody had a baby, they got married, they got divorced, somebody died. I mean, these are not, this isn't, and if you're good and you're doing 6, 7, 8 deals a month, I have the stress of all those people at one time on my back, and it's my job to keep cool.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Give us a couple of things here on the consumer side. We've talked about a few things that NAR's done for agents. You guys, I'm sure there were agents that took PPP while they were still working full time.
No, come on, that never happened.
There's that support, independent contractor status
that helps people out of the country.
Yeah, exactly. So let's switch this. What is it from the consumer side? What are some things that NAR has done from that perspective on how it's advocated for buyers and sellers?
That the market would be drastically different.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you several. National Flood Insurance Program. I mean, we are always saving the National Flood Insurance Program. And frankly speaking, Congress, they play political football with it, and other budgetary issues when it comes to a lapse. But we're always there having to tell them, listen, you don't understand. If this lapses even a day, thousands of transactions go south. Okay. There are people who are, you talk about the CARES Act. I had a doctor working at the Cleveland Clinic moving to Boston, and a doctor in New York moving to the Cleveland Clinic when we went shut down. And I was on the phone with the governor's office and the Department of Commerce in Ohio 5 hours before we were declared an essential service in Ohio. Not because we should have been an essential service, but to tell them who else needed to be essential service, so these two doctors could still go do their job and help the public. But National Flood Insurance, same thing. Can you imagine if there's a doctor that Miami General or whatever hospital needed in Florida, and he can't move because that house needs flood insurance, and the flood insurance program lapsed for a day? Every single time, it's all the time with National Flood Insurance. Another great one. I was chair of federal financing and housing policy in 2015. That helped us lead to what was called HR 3700. This was a bill that actually passed unanimously through the House and Senate. You can't plant a tree unanimously.
You just totally caught me off guard.
Okay.
Yeah, we buried the lead. Yeah,
unanimously. Okay, and in this bill was a change to the FHA condo policy. We had to prove to Congress that they were single-handedly destroying the condo market by how arduous it was to get condo associations approved for FHA financing, and then the recertification process being such a short 2-year period of time, and then also all of the information that had to be collected. But what happened when that changed? This changed in 2008 during the mortgage meltdown. They took all this stuff away, stripped it away, and they also took away what was called spot approvals. Now, spot approvals allow, let's say you as an individual with great credit want to use an FHA financing loan to buy a condo. You could individually get approved for that association, even if the association was not approved. HR 3700 brought that back, and that was single-handedly done by the National Association of Realtors.
1031 exchange is another one.
Mortgage interest deduction. I mean, we're constantly getting mortgage interest. There's so many things. Yeah,
you touched on 2008, and to me, that's the example that I always use when people want to bash NAR, because when candidly, the entire globe went into some version of recession because we got a little weird with housing in the U.S., right? Yeah. And the government was looking for, we talked about blame earlier. They were looking for someone to blame. They were going around the industry trying to figure out, and I'm sure there were meetings in the room where it happens, to quote Hamilton, the play, on figuring out who they could blame. And you know who got blamed? The mortgage industry. You know who didn't get blamed? The real estate industry. Now, we were all complicit. Like, we all were involved, right? The mortgage industry was making the loans. We were, we all were part of the problem.
You're talking like 2005, 4, 3, like all that stuff. Yeah, I wasn't licensed then.
Yeah. So the
that's the disclaimer.
Look at you.
Wasn't part
bullets.
of it.
You are.
I'm on the cleanup crew.
Yeah. But
no, I hear you. We were not. You're right.
We were not. The mortgage industry got a total overhaul.
Smashed.
Right? Smashed. And
Dodd-Frank.
Yes. Yeah. And why? Well, because the National Mortgage Association isn't as powerful as the National Realtors Association. Period. Like, should it work that way? I don't know. But that's what happened.
Right. Well, it is also that mortgage industry and the banking industry in general that took the screws out, of underwriting.
For sure.
We didn't allow, we didn't, as an industry, allow somebody to sign an affidavit saying I make $120,000 a year. Hey, here's a home.
Yes,
Right.
Our industry did benefit from the looser regulations, but we didn't create. We didn't create them, but I'm sure they would have liked to spread the blame around, and they didn't. And my personal opinion, I have nothing to base this on other than logic, but my personal opinion is NAR is a big part of why.
We all agree, including you, and you're on the cleanup committee, that NAR has a lot of things it needs to fix. And it sounds like you are, and we are rooting for you.
Yeah.
And we are the industry. I hope the industry is rooting for you, and that those changes we see those changes, that these things happen, whatever it turns out to be. And there's listening, there's communication, etc. And the industry also needs to understand, which was one of the things that, why we were glad that you came today, that without having a seat at that table, I'll go as bold as that most people that are currently in this profession will not have a job. They will not have a job because policies will be put in place, decisions will be made, things will happen with lots of unintended consequences. And we all know this is how it works. It's always trying to educate people on the unintended consequences of bills that are proposed and having that influence. And to the people that talk about wanting to burn this thing down, I would argue, can we just maybe remodel it? Can we remodel the house and just not throw the baby out with the bathwater and let's do a little bit. We'll get the brick out of there and we'll come up with some new construction and, figure out how to adapt to this future. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on my statements there?
I like that analogy. I think that's spot on. I mean, I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, listen. One thing we didn't address, by the way, is the lawsuits. Mm-hmm. I want to, since I have the opportunity to go on record, I'm gonna. But yes, we do have to remodel, and we are remodeling. And there's going to be a lot of, I think great changes. I think honestly, a lot of great things for the better. But this industry, is 17% of every dollar spent in the country. Okay. It's huge and it's massive and it needs protection, and it needs protection of something very strong and powerful. And you're right that we have a seat at every table. When we listen to congressional people, when we listen to regulatory officials, whether at one of our conferences, and maybe they're greasing us because they're talking to us, but also when we go out and we're just out in the marketplace where several industry players are, mm-hmm. Invariably I'm always hearing, you guys are as important and as relevant a group as we talk to. Mm-hmm. And we would not be able to do what we do without the information, the research, and the relationship that we have with the National Association of Realtors. I can't tell you how many times I hear it. Okay. And I'm going to tell you that all of that is done at a high level and extremely professional. And when it comes to these lawsuits and thinking that there's this huge conspiracy, with NAR, and listen, I'm a home services broker owner. Okay. Yeah. I've been that since before the beginning of those lawsuits. And I'll tell you, as God is my witness, never once have we talked about price fixing at NAR. Never once has the NAR said anything down to us. Never once. Who are these guys? They didn't even, not one shred of evidence. They're supposed to prove there was this conspiracy. And all they're going to do is hurt the general public with their money grab of these lawsuits and bring down an extremely, try to bring down an extremely well-working system of protection of the public. That's what NAR is. You think that NAR is anything more than that? If there's one thing that you can define NAR as, we protect the public. Forget that we protect realtors or that we protect our members or whatever. We protect the general public. We protect the real estate market and the American dream. And that's God's honest truth.
And by the way, Seth, there's your ad campaign.
Is that it?
There's part of it right there. I think that's part of it, is instead of just constantly talking about our agents, let's start talking about the consumer.
It's the absolute truth.
I think that's a great way to end the podcast. By the way, Seth, thank you for being here, genuinely, and your candor and honesty and like off script everything. And also I'll say thank you for volunteering your time, because I don't. So we need people like you to do that. I will educate myself more on this stuff as well, because I think it's important to lead from the top. So,
and these kind of vulnerable and authentic conversations are how you win the trust back and how you affect change. So you're leading from the front with that, and I'm sure some people are I can't wait for the comment section on when we post this one. But you're leading from the front, and your willingness to be vulnerable, to accept responsibility for failures, to try to think about solutions to those failures is exactly what the industry needs. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in your corner, bud. So
thanks for having me.
All right. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. You don't want to let Keith down, do you? Hit subscribe, and not only will you never miss an episode of this podcast, but you'll also never make Keith sad. He's easily entertained.